Kathlene Funada, a young girl, records a video of herself and explains, with urgency in her voice, that she is leading proof of her existence because, in 2030, a deadly disease called Gibiate will ravage the world, beginning in Venice, Italy. Kathlene describes how the disease has altered the course of human history in just 2 years. Back in 1680, in Japan, a storm rages in the night, and 2 men, Kanazaki Sensui and Sanada Kenroku, are seen on a boat, both of whom have been exiled. Sensui revealed that he was asked to take the fall by his master, who promised to call him back once the exile was over. Kenroku has his own story. He lived with a woman until he was arrested for murdering an evil shogun. As Kenroku faced execution, he chose exile over death, but as tumultuous waves tossed their boat, a light from the sea enveloped them. They awoke to find themselves in a desolate and destroyed Tokyo in the year 2030. They initially thought they had entered the afterlife, with one of the towering buildings in the distance resembling a palace as they explored their surroundings. Kenroku and Sensui approached a solitary figure seated among the ruins with caution. They were taken aback when the man transformed into a monstrous creature, and because he grabbed a piece of iron to defend himself, the weapon was rendered ineffective. Kenroku then used the fire extinguisher to strike the monster, but it was ineffective. When Kenroku attempted to engage the monster, he discovered that it was moving slower than expected, just as the creature advanced on them. Without hesitation, Kathlene and a man named Mayada came to their aid. She took out a gun, fired bullets that ensnared and electrocuted the monster, effectively defeating it. She beckoned Sensui and Kenroku to join her in the car as they drove away, quickly collecting its blood. Kenroku was impressed by the vehicle's speed, comparing it to a fast horse. Meanwhile, Sensui inquired of Kathlene whether they were in the afterlife. She informed them that they were in Tokyo and asked about their origins. Their outmoded attire took Mayada aback, and Kenroku revealed they had been on a boat leaving Edo before arriving in Tokyo. This information astounded Kathlene, who suspected Sensui and Kenroku were samurai. Then Mayada tells Kenroku and Sensui that Tokyo is the future of Edo. Kathlene adds that many centuries have passed since Japan's Edo period was at peace for the past 80 years, but the recent outbreak of the infectious disease Gibiate has changed everything. Those infected with the disease transform into monsters. Kenroku panics as he recalls the monster they encountered earlier, wondering if he, too, has been infected. Kathlene informs Kenroku that as long as they avoid being stung by Gibiate, they will not become infected. When Mayada discovers Sensui is a samurai, he inquires about his katana after revealing that he only came with the clothes on his back. Kenroku, on the other hand, mentions that he is a shinobi and does not need a katana to fight. Mayada then inquires about Sensui's samurai fighting abilities. Sensui was once known as a mass murderer, according to Kenroku. Mayada offers to retrieve a katana from his house after realizing his strength. He instructs Kathlene to drive the car and return to the camp while he recovers the weapon. Brian, an American soldier, greeted Kathlene, Sensui, and Kenroku shortly after arriving. Sensui and Kenroku's ancient clothing took aback the people at the camp. Soon after greeting her mother, Eureka, and informing her that she had brought a samurai and a ninja, Kenroku became confused. Kathlene explained that her mother's soul had been damaged, causing her to be unable to distinguish between Gibiate and humans. After that, Kathlene took Sensui and Kenroku to see Dr. Yoshinaga, accompanied by another American soldier, Adam. Adam expressed his disbelief that the idea of samurai and ninjas traveling through time reminded Kathlene that many people in the current situation have gone insane. He also suspected Sensui and Kenroku of having mental illnesses. Adam warned Kathlene to watch Sensui and Kenroku in case they stole something. Yoshinaga introduced himself and explained that Gibiate was a disease that turned humans into animals after Adam left to gather supplies. Despite the strangeness of the illness, he believed Sensui and Kenroku's time travel story. When Yoshinaga learned that a monstrous creature had attacked Sensui, he asked if he had heard the sound of water dripping in his head. If not, he would not be infected. Sensui reassured Kathlene that he had not heard such a sound. Yoshinaga revealed he was working on a drug that could turn Gibiate-infected people into humans. Kathlene then gave him the Gibiate blood sample she had obtained earlier. They turned on the lights in the camp at night because Yoshinaga explained that Gibiate disliked light, and Maeda had returned home with his katana. Kathlene recorded Sensui, asking him to share his samurai story and demonstrate his sword skills, and he began by explaining that he was adopted by a foreign swordsman at a young age and taught Western swordsmanship, so since Sensui was only 15 when he was taken in by his master and sent to them in Ryo Dojo to train in the art of fighting with 2 katanas. While exploring the camp housing area with Kathlene and Kenroku, she informed them that only 50 people had become Gibiates. Kathlene was eager to put Sensei's strength to the test and challenged him to a fight, however, because he was initially hesitant, she reminded him that if he were indeed a samurai, he would have to prove himself in the face of danger. He easily defeated her after accepting the challenge, impressing her with his skill. He taught her that a true samurai never dulls their blade by bumping it in battle, which she remembered as a reward for his victory. Kathlene assisted Sensui and Kenroku in dressing more formally. Kenroku's hair had turned blue, making him easily identifiable from a distance. While Kathlene complimented him on his distinct appearance, he was concerned that standing out would make him a target. Sensui and his companions then went to Eureka to treat a wound on his hands caused by an attack by the Gibiate. Eureka consulted a Japanese history book to learn more about his master, Matsumoto Jozen, and delivered the devastating news that Jozen had betrayed Sensui and was eventually beheaded. Meanwhile, Maeda was being pursued by Gibiateic tails in the form of spiders, and Adam and Brian sprang into action, fending off the monsters with searchlights and gunfire. However, Kathlene became increasingly concerned about Sensui, who had become unusually quiet since learning of Jozen's fate. Kenroku explained that Sensui felt deep guilt and regret for not being by Jozen's side in his final moments. Maeda arrived with his katana shortly after Sensui left the building, lost in thought and grappling with his emotions. The camp's electricity went out unexpectedly, causing residents to panic due to the imminent threat of Gibiate. Attacks shortly after Yoshinaga assigned Kathlene the task of rescuing her mother and asked Kenroku to assist in defending the camp. We watched in disbelief as the Gibiates descended on the helpless people. Maeda then offered him his katana, encouraging him to take up arms and defend their community as the situation worsened. Sensui sprang into action, battling the invading Gibiates with his skills and weapons. As he fought, he promised Maeda that he would bring him to Eureka for treatment, and he fought with all his might to keep that promise. Kenroku and Yoshinaga worked to protect the camp residents. They gathered everyone in a safe location and proposed burning the tents to drive the Gibiates away. Meanwhile, Kathlene dashed to her mother's aid, using her abilities to free her from the grip of the Gibiates. The defensive line was quickly overwhelmed despite Sensui's and the others' efforts. The defenders' bullets could not penetrate the Gibiate's skin. But Kenroku was quick thinking, strangling one of the monsters at the front gate with a cable. Adam struggled to hold back the onslaught of monsters. Still, they dispatched the Gibiate that threatened Adam because they arrived just in time. The situation became direr by the moment since Sensui took command of the defensive line, commanding Adam and Brian to find Kathlene. Adam resented Sensui but was forced to comply when Brian pressed the issue. Sensui's mastery of the katana as he fought against the Gibiates astounded Kenroku and Yoshinaga as they arrived on the scene. Sensui came across the Gibiate, who was far too powerful to defeat with his sword alone. Kenroku threw a grenade, exposing the creature's weak point and allowing Sensui to deliver the killing blow. The group fought off the Gibiates until dawn, but victory was bittersweet. Maeda had been infected, and as he began to hear the telltale dripping sounds, he expressed his joy at having met a tremendous samurai like Sensui before requesting that he end his life before becoming a Gibiate. Maeda's death was devastating, and even Kathlene, who was usually so quiet, couldn't hold back her tears. Later, Kathlene interviewed Kenroku, who revealed himself to be the Sanada clan's youngest descendant. He left the clan to be with Okuni but was exiled after killing the shogun who had kidnapped her. Kenroku was struck by a sense of familiarity in Kathlene's face as he spoke to her, realizing with surprise that she bore a striking resemblance to Okuni. On the other hand, Yoshinaga, Brian, and Eureka look out at the desolate camp. Soon after Eureka proposes that they travel to Nagano's secluded countryside, surrounded by mountains, they discuss their next move and weigh their options. She explained that because the area was sparsely populated, fewer Gibiates could be found. When Yoshinaga agreed and mentioned the Nagano research facility, they decided to go there next. Yoshinaga then assigns Sensui and the others to collect Gibiate stingers, as he requires a large quantity of venom to research a vaccine. He leads them to the building where he stored his samples, hoping that the helicopter on the roof remains intact and can serve as an escape route as they enter the building. Yoshinaga had Sensui and Kenroku stand guard because he suspected Gibates were lurking inside. They moved quickly to clear the premises, and Yoshinaga directed the others to gather what they could carry and meet him on the roof shortly after Brian approached him and asked if he genuinely believed he could create a vaccine. Brian expressed his grief over losing loved ones and hoped his research would provide solace. As they gathered on the roof, Yoshinaga assured Brian that he had obtained enough samples with Sensui and Kenroku to expedite the vaccine's production. Sensui sensed a menacing presence. They were shocked to see a man collapse on the roof of the adjacent building. The group took off quickly in a helicopter, intending to rescue him. Their mission, however, was cut short by a new type of Gibiate armed with supersonic waves. Kenroku was shocked that this Gibiate was not frightened by light, and Yoshinaga pointed out its unique abilities. They attempted to flee, but the Gibiate's tentacles snagged the helicopter. Soon after, Kenroku took a leap of faith and used his thread to cut the tentacles, but it was in vain. The tentacles were discovered to be severed. Sensui sprang into action just as the Gibiate was about to strike him down, saving Kenroku from certain death. He then swung his katana at the Gibiate, but it broke instead. When the fainting man regained consciousness, he noticed the helicopter hovering above him. He called it a bird and waved frantically, attracting Kenroku's attention. Kenroku quickly tossed him a cable and told him to pull it down. Finally, the man could draw the helicopter closer, and Yoshinaga and the rest of the team jumped out. However, the victory was short-lived because Brian was injured in the fight with Gibiate, and Kenroku remained on the helicopter, determined to bring Gibiate down. He collided with the monster and caused it to explode. The man who had assisted them introduced himself the next morning as Onikura Yukinojo, a warrior monk from Hangaji. As they ventured out to gather supplies, Kenroku and Sensui were familiar with his lineage and knew he was from a time before them. Thanks for watching. If this series is the most liked in my anime recap production, I will make a part 2. Also, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to help me make more content.